This is the village they're talking about. This is what it means by it takes a village to raise a child. We were all supported, we were all loved and cared for, and I never felt completely alone. Welcome to Worthy Mother Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Hardy, a mom of two on a mission to help moms everywhere feel less alone. This is not a parenting podcast. Instead, it's a space for pushing back against societal expectations of perfection and embracing self-compassion in your motherhood journey. Let's get into it. Hello, I am recording this shortly after returning back from a week-long family vacation, my first one as a single mom, and I am both deeply exhausted. I am so tired, and yet my soul is so nourished. And I'm glad to say that it was a really fun week. And that is in large part due to the fact that I was traveling with family to meet up with extended family, and that so many people were on board with helping me with my kids and really giving me the space to fill my emotional cup, get the things that I needed to get out of the family trip without having to worry too much about always having to be the one person completely in charge of my kids, and also just rallying around my kids and making sure they had the best time and were safe and cared for the whole week. And that experience is what inspired me to do this episode on what it really means to have a village, what it really means to have a support system rallying around you and your kids in the pursuit of raising kids, because we've all heard the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And there's so much truth to that phrase. It's something that is thrown around so often. And yet we rarely stop to talk about what it actually means to have a village, what the village actually looks like, what it means to accept help from your village, what it means to ask for help from your village. And the experience that I had over the last week really helped me see the value of having a village and what it really takes to raise our children. It's not a one-person job. It's not a two-person job. It takes a lot of hands on deck, a lot of love and support and care. And as moms, we're all deserving of that love and support and care, both having other people pour that into our children and for ourselves. There are so many moms out there raising kids that don't have necessarily what we think of as a traditional support system. And that reality, paired with the fact that we are sold this message that we as the mother should be doing everything, we're really essentially sold this idea that we should be the primary caretaker for our children. We should be giving them everything they need. We should be self-sacrificing completely for them. The combination of those two factors often leads to moms not truly tapping into having a village, not truly tapping into the essence that it does take a village to raise a child. And I want us to be able to change that, at least a little bit. So, like I said, I recently took my first family trip as a single mom, and it showed me in both big and small ways what a modern day village really looks like. I'll share some of the details of this trip and my family just so you kind of understand what we're working with here. But my kids are almost 7 and 4. And so they are a lot of work, particularly my 4-year-old. He still is in a place where he needs a lot of attention, a lot of support, basically all the time. And we were traveling by airplane a few states away. It wasn't like a super long travel day, but of course there's complications. Flight got delayed. We were running through the airport to catch our next one after a very, very quick layover. And it's just a lot going on. It's the kind of thing that I don't think that I'm equipped right now to handle that on my own. There's no way that I would be getting on a plane with my 2 little ones by myself to go travel a few states away. It's just not happening at this time. No thank you. Our end destination was a home that we share with extended family, and we were meeting up with my aunts and uncles and cousins, and really excited to have a great time. So I was traveling with my mom and sister. We were meeting up with my dad, who was already where we were going, and meeting up with his side of the family. And from the get-go, the support was very evident. I live close to my family. My parents live nearby, and one of my sisters does as well. So I'm used to them stepping in and helping me. We have a really good relationship in that way. When my first son was born when I was 23, I had a lot of familial support. And now, as I'm navigating life as a single mom, they've also stepped in just in really important, incredible ways that have helped me just in the day-to-day life, school pickups, having the kids out of the house when I have a meeting and didn't realize they'd be home during that time, all kinds of things like that. So on the travel from home to our destination, my sister and my mom were right there with me and the kids. We're sitting on the plane, my mom and sister are sitting with my youngest while I'm sitting with my oldest. My sister is helping carry the little one through the airport. Again, we had like the quickest turnaround because of a delayed flight. And we're running through the airport, and I'm holding my oldest's hand, running through the airport. My sister has my little one in tow and it's running with him. And she was definitely tired and sore after that. But we like hustled together, we worked together. And I, at no point in that, felt like I was alone with these kids. Like I was going to get stranded in the airport because we were all in it together. And again, that's just kind of our dynamic. Like they do show up consistently and regularly. So it was not out of the norm for that to be happening. Of course, the situation was completely out of the norm. That's not something we're usually doing, but I'm comfortable with them stepping in and helping me with my kids in big ways. What I wasn't necessarily expecting was what happened when we arrived to our destination. There was tons of extended family there. My aunts and uncles were there, as well as a bunch of cousins. And these are people that I see regularly, but hadn't seen in a number of years because, I'm raising kids and we haven't been traveling as much over the last few years. So they've met my kids. My kids knew some of these people. Some of them they remember from, past meetings. We've talked about them, but seeing these people is totally out of the norm for me and my kids, right? The level of support and showing up for me and for my kids over the week was incredible. And while I was expecting that to some extent, on this trip, I had to work. I work from home, and so I was able to bring my laptop and work on the trip. I worked less hours than I typically do, but I still was working. So I had talked to some family and let them know, like, I am going to need help with the kids while I'm there because, like, I'm just going to need help with the kids. So I was expecting help with the kids. I didn't think it was going to be me and the kids the whole time. Again, I have that relationship with my family. But I was not necessarily expecting so many different people to rally around me and the kids and really make it a fairly stress-free week with my kids as the sole parent on this trip with them. I really had an epiphany while I was there that, like, this is the village they're talking about. This is what it means by it takes a village to raise a child. We were all supported, we were all loved and cared for, and I never felt completely alone. So I want to share what that kind of looked like in this situation. My dad took the kids to the beach multiple times for hours on end. This beach in particular has big sandbars, so it's fairly safe for kids. Like there's lots of sand to play on, and they just built sandcastles for hours while I worked. Like I wasn't worried, I wasn't concerned. The beach was just right down the street from the house. It was incredible. My aunts and uncles joined them at times. My mom went out there at times. I was able to go out and just sit and relax at times while they were building these sandcastles. I was able to like truly enjoy myself on the beach and not worry about always having my eyes on the kids because they were being cared for and looked after. It was awesome. My sister, once again on hikes, was carrying my little one, giving shoulder rides. There were quite a few people actually who at different times took the 4-year-old and was carrying him because he is a reluctant hiker, a reluctant walker. Not that we were doing like anything crazy, but he'll sit down and not move. So they were helping carry him. There were multiple people who were playing with my kids, building little connect roller coasters with my youngest. One of my cousins, who is 10 years younger than me, so he's somebody that when I was little, he was like the little kid that I was playing with. He was playing Pokemon. He brought all his Pokemon stuff for my oldest to go through and like play with, and they were having so much fun. Like my 7-year-old thinks my cousin is the single coolest person on this planet. They had so much fun. And in the mornings, if I was in bed or if I was brushing my teeth when the kids got out of bed and ran out, family members would help them get breakfast. They were all looking after the kids while I was working. And even one of the nights there was trivia being hosted at a bar, and it was like adults only. It was right down the street from the house we were staying at, but the kids couldn't come. And one of my family members didn't want to go, and so he offered to stay with the kids and help out. And this is one of the family members that my kids are a little bit more familiar with. It was awesome. And it totally allowed me to like participate with the family, do the things. I didn't feel like I was missing out. Of course, sometimes it was me with the kids, but sometimes it wasn't. And I got to go have fun with my cousins. I got to go do the things that I wanted to do. And there was never any guilt put upon me, right? There was never anyone being like, oh, maybe you should be the one to stay home with the kids. It was just people offering to help, doing these things, making me feel like I was totally supported. I was totally not alone. And what's so cool in that is that not only were my kids being looked after and cared for and loved and supported, but I also had the opportunity to connect with my cousins, to spend time on the beach with my mom while my kids were building these sandcastles, to do a tarot card reading with my aunt. my Aunt Sydney, who is like one of the biggest supporters of this podcast. So shout out to you, Auntie Sydney. It was so awesome to get to feel like I was replenishing my soul on this trip while also navigating being a single mom, the sole parent of my kids on a trip, 2 states away from home. And again, upon return from this trip, I was like, that's it. Like, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the village. Now, obviously, that situation was a week-long trip with family. We were all staying in one big house, like we were all together. That's not exactly what the village is that we're talking about in day-to-day life, most likely, right? Like, we're not expecting that our families live in these communal ways. Quite frankly, I wouldn't want that. We're too close, right? But the point is that I could see how I could be supported by other people and how I could just let that kind of support happen. My family that loves and cares about me were showing up for my kids who they also love and care about. And they were showing up for me. They were giving me support. They understood the situation I was in, bringing my kids all this way by myself. Well, not really by myself, but it could have felt like I was by myself. It could have felt like I was completely alone. And I wasn't. They completely rallied around me. We all need a village. Even people without kids need a village. Think about like when your car breaks down on the side of the road. Even if you weren't with your kids, even if somebody doesn't have kids, your car breaks down on the side of the road, you need help. You need somebody to help you. Or you're moving and you need other hands to help pack the boxes and get them on the truck. Or you're just lonely and want to get dinner with someone. We need people in our lives, even if it's not necessarily people helping with our kids. We all need people. We all need connection. And yes, some of these things can be paid for, but there are limitations there. There's less connection when we're paying for services for somebody to help us move rather than calling on friends who can help pack the box while we drink a beer together or whatever. And the reality is that paying for services like that, paying for that village isn't necessarily accessible for everyone. But when it comes to having kids, that village is even more crucial. Not only can our village act as a way to support our kids and help us get things done, help us do the things we need to do as a person. You think about having somebody watching your kids, providing childcare, that part of the village giving us the space to do the things we need to do. But they can also show up for us as a human, as a mother, and help us feel completely supported as a full, entire human being. So, what does the village look like in actual day to day life? Because, again, like I said, I have a pretty strong village of my family members where I live, and they do support me, but it's not anything like that trip that I just talked about, right? Like, that is a very unique, isolated situation where I saw that village show up in full force in that way. What does it look like in the day to day? This is something that is going to look completely different for every person. I think typically when we think of a village, we're thinking of family members who show up for our kids. We're thinking of our partner and maybe grandparents who are showing up for our kid. And really, like, the vision of that only goes so far because, again, like I said earlier, so often it's just kind of presented to us like we actually, as the mom, should be doing it all. So there's this idea of a traditional village, but that traditional village isn't even something that we should be attaining for because we should be doing it all on our own according to this external standard, right? But the fact of the matter is that the villages that each of us have access to and the villages that each of us need are going to be different. If you are somebody who lives near family who is willing and able to help and support you and your family versus if you live somewhere away from family or you don't have family that is there for you in that way. If you are somebody who is raising kids with a partner, or if you're a single mom who is co-parenting with a very involved other individual, or if you're a single mom who is raising kids on your own, all of those situations are going to look very different. If you are somebody who is maybe a military spouse and removed from family, and maybe your partner isn't there some of the time you're totally solo parenting, some of the time you have another hands-on partner, that's going to be a unique situation. And then we think of moms who are staying home and being the primary caretaker for their kids versus moms who are working outside of the home or working in the home but need space from their kids and are not always performing that role of primary caregiver. The village that is going to be needed to support those individuals and families is going to be different. So what can the village look like if it's not a partner and it's not the family who's there showing up for you and helping with the kids? Really, there's no limit to this answer. Whether it's friends that show up for us, that can be friends who maybe don't have kids of their own, who love and adore your kids like they are family, or friends who maybe do have kids. Mom friends are huge for the way that we can support each other. We can be a part of each other's village and step in when it's needed. There are childcare providers, daycares. I mean, if we're talking about a village and we're talking about people to step in and help with our kids, help us be able to do our jobs and get time to ourselves and whatever else it needs to be, we can't leave out the fact that daycares and childcare providers are so often parts of our village. We can really think of these people as resources for us and for our kids and embrace that as part of our village instead of feeling ashamed that we have to pay somebody to watch our kids during the day while we're at work. Our kids' teachers, I mean, they are people who are supporting our kids in growth and development. They're part of the team, they're part of the village that cares for and supports our kids. I want to also note the village is not just for our kids, the village is for us as individuals too. So often we think of the village as for the child's benefit. It's like it takes a village to raise a child. It's all about the raising of the child. They help with babysitting, they help with school pickups, they help with all of that. But moms also need to be nurtured. Like, we are humans, we need that connection. We need the people in our lives pouring into our cups. We need to be connecting with others and pouring into their cups, all of that. So part of this is also seeking out relationships where there can be those emotional check-ins, where there can be encouragement when things feel hard, where there can be a sense of belonging. You're invited to things. You have somebody to invite along to an event that you want to go to. You feel like you're seen. You feel like you're cared for. So when it comes to having a village, when it comes to curating your own village, it's important to ask yourself, how do you get to a place where you have connections, where you're able to feel seen as a person? Not just a parent, not just a mom, but where you're able to exist as you and feel nurtured and cared for and loved. We can't forget about the parts of the village that support us as individuals. The village does not have to be big, it doesn't have to be loud, it doesn't have to be obvious. You may be doing a lot of the caretaking work, and it may feel like a lot, and it may feel like there's not always other options, and that very well may be the reality of your situation. But it is so important that we have a village. We all need and deserve a village. And if you're working from a place of not having that support and you're struggling, it's important to recognize and acknowledge that, yes, there's nothing wrong with you for struggling without a village. There's nothing wrong with you for feeling like you can't do it all, because you can't. There's no reality in which anyone can do it all and be everything to your kids and also be able to take care of yourself in the way that you really need to be taken care of. And so there is the factor of seeking out that village. There is the factor of choosing to send your kids to daycare a couple times a week. There's the factor of prioritizing friendships and making friendships and building connections with people who will be a part of your village, and for showing up for them as villagers, somebody who's willing to step in and help when needed. But it's not always the access to the village that's the problem. Sometimes it's actually just our own abilities to ask for and accept help that gets in the way of having a village. And again, going back to this idea that moms are supposed to do it all, moms are supposed to be the one who are completely sacrificing themselves in the raising of their children. No wonder so many of us have a hard time asking for and accepting help when that is the messaging that we have grown up with quite literally our entire lives. So I want to offer a little bit of a reframe if you struggle with asking for or receiving help. And that reframe is seeing this as connection instead of as your personal failure. Going back to the example I gave of the family trip that I was on, there were moments where I was like, am I doing enough with my kids? Am I doing enough for my kids? And then somebody would come up to me and say, I'm having so much fun playing this game with your kid. And I'd be like, oh, they actually want to be doing that. They're excited to show up for my kids in this way. And just hearing that helped me reframe that tinge of guilt into, wait a second. This is about connection. These people love and support me and my family, and they want to show up for us. They want to show up in connection with us. Coming together and helping each other out is what it looks like to have a village in action. It is a gift to let others show up for us, just as we want to show up for others in our lives. It's not selfish to want to have a friend to call when you're struggling. It's not selfish to desire having other people who love and care and support your kids. Wanting connection and needing connection is so human. And if we can reframe the fear and resistance to asking for help and accepting help from others as, wait a second, I want to be in connection with these people. I want to allow them to love me the way that I love them. That is such a powerful reframe and can really, really allow us to be a part of a village and get help from a village that will benefit us so much in the long run. Needing help is not a weakness. It is truly just part of being human. And importantly, your worth as a mom and as a human is not measured by how much you do. So as we wrap this episode, I just want to leave you with this. You deserve support, and it is more than okay to ask for help. You don't have to be doing this alone. And really, I would argue, you can't do this alone. None of us can. I do want to offer you a few action steps as we wrap this episode. If you are somebody who is looking to build your village more, or just really acknowledge and recognize the village that you do have. So you could reach out to someone you trust this week, maybe a friend you haven't talked to in a while. It doesn't have to be to ask for anything, just to say hey, pour into that connection a little bit. You could thank somebody who is a part of your village. If you have an involved grandparent in your life, or a really awesome daycare provider, or a friend who loves your kids like they're her own, say thanks, acknowledge it. And if you're up for it, offer to show up for another mom in a small but meaningful way. Maybe send a text checking in, or offer to do school pickup one day, or maybe meet up with the kids for a play date where you can sit and chill and talk while the kids do their thing. That's it for this episode. If you are enjoying the podcast week after week, I would really appreciate it if you would leave a rating and review wherever you listen. And make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out on next week's episode. With that, you are worthy, Mama.